Do you like being wronged? Most of us would honestly and truthfully say no, that we like being right and proving other people wrong. And that is the same approach the Pharisees have in Matthew 22, which is what we talked about this past Sunday. But the question should be, what does God want us to do? What should we do in response to being wrong? Take a listen.
So what should our response be when we are wrong? Hopefully it's not like the Pharisees, right? Let's just not associate with people anymore because we don't want to be proven wrong. So how do we respond better than the Pharisees, but also while still imitating Christ? And the way we do that is by perfecting humility. This is how we can imitate Christ and also respond better than the Pharisees. Philippians chapter 2 talks about how Christ is the embodiment of humility, right? He becomes his own creation. He becomes obedient to death, even death on a cross. He humbles himself. And we too need to humble ourselves in response to when we are wrong. Again, not if, but when. Because we're going to be wrong eventually about something. I guarantee you, we're human. So when we are wrong, we need to be humble and say, you know what? I was wrong. I'm wrong about this, I'm wrong about that. Or say, you know what? I'm wrong and you are right. You are correct. I was or am wrong. We need to be humble in our response when we are wrong.
You see, if we want to be bringing people to Christ, we have to first be willing to admit that we are not Christ ourselves. See, we try our hardest to imitate Christ, the best of our ability, but we fail a lot in our attempts to be like Christ. You see, the more that we say, I was wrong, or I am wrong, the more authentic we can truly be with the people around us. We don't have to be the people who claim to know everything about everything, nor should we. You want to know why? Because you and I are not God. We don't know everything about everything. You see, but I believe that there's an even more important reason to admit that we are wrong. And that is because when we admit that we are wrong, we can start to sow seeds of forgiveness. Forgiveness can be extremely challenging if we first don't admit that we are wrong. We should first admit that we are wrong. And then when we ask for forgiveness, it is way, way more sincere. And I know what you're thinking. Xander, we need to be right about some things. And to that I say, yes, I agree completely. We need to preach the truth of God's word unashamedly. But we also need to be willing to admit when we are wrong about certain things. Instead of being prideful, we need to be humble. Instead of hiding behind our pride, we need to let humility reign in our hearts. The book of Proverbs talks about humility all over the place. And in one of the most jarring proverbs, one of the most jarring sayings is actually quoted in James chapter 4 in the New Testament. And it reads, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. You and I are called not to delight in our pride, but rather to serve in humility like Jesus Christ. And that is today's Leftovers.